Welcome back, everyone. We're doing a deep dive into the sometimes intimidating world of cybersecurity.
But don't worry, you don't need to be a hacker to follow along.
Right. Today, we'll break down some key terms from the glossary of secure and resilient software development. So, think of this as like a crash course.
Yeah, like cybersecurity 101.
Exactly. And trust me, some of the terms we're going to talk about today are way more interesting than they sound at first.
Oh, yeah.
Like, ever heard of a honeypot? We'll get to that later, and you'll see what I mean.
I think what's really cool about this glossary is that it's not just about defining terms. It's more about like understanding the core principles of how we protect our, our digital world.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with some foundational concepts. The first term is access control lists, or ACLs.
Yeah, ACL.
They sound super techy, I
I
think.
do.
But how would you explain these to someone who's like not a cybersecurity expert?
Okay. So think of ACLs like those bouncers you find like really exclusive clubs, right? They control who gets into a club. But in this case, they're controlling access to, resources on a network or system, just like a bouncer checking your ID to see if you're on the list.
So ACLs are like the gatekeepers of the digital world,
Exactly.
making sure only authorized users get in. But then what's the difference between authentication and authorization? These terms always confuse me.
It's easy to mix them up, for sure.
Yeah.
Authentication is all about confirming you are who you say you are.
Okay.
Like showing your driver's license to prove your identity.
Right.
But in the digital world, that's like logging in with a username and password, right?
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you can do everything on that website.
So that's where authorization comes in.
Exactly. Authorization figures out what you can actually DO once you've logged in, right?
Gotcha.
It's like the difference between getting into a concert venue and having backstage passes.
Okay.
You might be authenticated to get into the concert, but you might not be authorized to go backstage.
So authentication's like getting your foot in the door, and then authorization is about what you can actually do once you're inside.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it. Now let's talk about attack surface. It kind of makes me think of like, like some ominous, shadowy area.
Yeah.
Is it as intimidating as it sounds?
I mean, it can be a bit intimidating, especially if you don't take it seriously.
Right.
Imagine a house with a ton of windows and doors, right? That's a large attack surface for a burglar.
Sure.
Well, it's the same with cybersecurity. Your attack surface is like all the possible weaknesses a hacker could exploit to get into your system.
So the more windows and doors you have, the more vulnerable you are.
Yeah, pretty much.
And in the digital world, it's the same with all the apps you use, right?
All right.
The devices you connect, even like that old blog you forgot about.
Yeah.
You're basically increasing your attack surface
Exactly.
and making yourself more vulnerable.
Right. That's why minimizing your attack surface is it's key, right?
Yeah.
It's all about reducing those entry points, making it harder for bad actors to get in. Basically, it's about keeping your digital house secure.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, so we've covered how to control access, how to limit entry points.
Right.
But now, how do we actually protect the data itself? I think it's time to talk about encryption and cryptography. Can you explain, like, what's the difference between those two terms? I always feel like they're used interchangeably.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Cryptography is like the overall field.
Okay.
It's the science of secure communication. Encryption is like a specific technique under cryptography. It's what turns the information into a format that no one can read without the proper key.
So cryptography is like the big picture, and encryption is one of the tools.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And cryptography includes other techniques like hashing and digital signatures.
Okay.
Encryption is just that scrambling process to hide the information.
Gotcha. Okay. Now let's talk about symmetric versus asymmetric cryptography.
Okay, so imagine a locked box, okay?
Okay.
With symmetric cryptography, there's only one key,
Okay.
and that key both locks and unlocks the box.
So it's like a shared secret code.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone involved in the communication needs that same key.
Okay, but wouldn't that be risky if, like, the key fell into the wrong hands?
That's the catch, right? If that single key is compromised, anyone can unlock the box.
Right.
So asymmetric cryptography solves this problem by using two keys.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
Think of it like a mailbox.
Okay.
Anyone can drop a letter in your mailbox,
Yep.
but only you have the key to open it.
Okay.
So the sender uses your public key to encrypt the message, and only your private key can decrypt it.
Wow. That's clever.
Yeah,
So it's like having a custom lock for each recipient.
exactly.
Wouldn't that be a logistical nightmare?
It sounds complicated,
Yeah.
but it's actually it's how a lot of online security works.
Oh, okay. Secure websites, digital signatures, all of them.
Gotcha. So it might sound complicated, but it's making our online communication much more secure. Now, how about hashing? Where does that fit into the picture?
Hashing is all about making sure that that data hasn't been tampered with.
Okay.
Think of it like a unique fingerprint for a piece of data, right?
Okay.
You put the data through a hashing algorithm, and it spits out a unique string of characters.
So it's a way to verify that that a file or message hasn't been like altered during transmission.
Exactly. And if someone tries to mess with the data, even a tiny change will completely change the hash value.
Okay, so hashing is like a digital watchdog
Yeah, you could say that.
guarding the integrity of data. This last term in this section is public key infrastructure, or PKI.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
PKI is like a digital passport system.
Yeah.
It's all about trust online.
Yeah.
You know, think digital certificates, those are like digital IDs, right?
That verify who you are. Well, PKI is the system that manages and validates those certificates.
So PKI is like the gatekeeper of the digital identity world,
Yeah, pretty much.
verifying identities and making sure online communication is trustworthy. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here with these foundational concepts. But let's face it, cybersecurity is also about, understanding the threats and knowing how to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into that. Let's dive into that darker side of cybersecurity now and look at some of the attacks and vulnerabilities that are out there in the digital world.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so now that we've got a good grasp of those basic concepts, let's move on to some of the attacks that exploit vulnerabilities in systems.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a buffer overflow?
Honestly, it sounds like something that happens when you eat too much at a buffet.
Well, in a way, it's similar. Think of a buffer like a container with a fixed size.
Okay.
If you try to cram too much data into it, it overflows,
Right.
spilling into other areas.
Okay.
It's like trying to stuff too many clothes into a suitcase.
Uh-huh.
Things start to get messy and spill out.
Okay. I can see how that could cause problems.
Yeah.
But how does this relate to cybersecurity?
In a buffer overflow, attack hackers try to overload a buffer with data, right?
Yeah.
Causing it to spill over into adjacent memory. And if they're clever, they can sneak in malicious code along with that overflowing data.
So it's like sneaking in a virus while pretending to deliver a package. That's pretty sneaky.
Yeah, it's a classic attack technique.
Okay. That brings us to cross-site scripting, or XSS.
Yeah, XSS.
What's that all about?
Let's say you're browsing a website and suddenly a pop-up message appears. That looks totally legitimate,
Okay.
but it's actually fake. It's injected by an attacker.
Hold on. So attackers can just insert their own messages onto any website. That seems a little unsettling.
Not just any website, but websites that have vulnerabilities in their code, right? These flaws allow attackers to sneak in these malicious scripts that can do, all sorts of nasty things.
Like what?
Like stealing your data, redirecting you to shady websites, or even like defacing the website itself.
So it's like planting a booby trap on a seemingly safe website. Web developers must have their hands full trying to prevent this sort of thing.
They do. It's crucial to sanitize user input, right?
Yeah.
To prevent attackers from sneaking in that harmful code.
Okay. Moving on to denial of service or DOS attack.
Yeah, DOS attacks.
These sound like something straight out of a hacker movie.
They are a classic attack technique,
Yeah.
and they can be very disruptive. Imagine a website like being bombarded with so much traffic that it crashes and becomes inaccessible.
Right.
That's what a DOS attack aims to do.
Okay.
Overwhelm a system with requests, making it impossible for legitimate users to access it.
So it's like intentionally creating a massive traffic jam
Yeah,
on a website,
that's a good way to put it.
blocking out everyone who's actually trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And in today's digital world where, businesses rely so heavily on online services, a DOS attack can be crippling.
Okay, here's another attack that sounds straight out of a spy movie.
Yeah.
Man in the Middle, or MITM attack.
This one is all about eavesdropping.
Okay.
and potentially tampering with communication.
Yeah.
Imagine you're having a private conversation with someone
Uh-huh.
and a third party secretly intercepts your messages. That's basically a MITM attack.
So it's like having someone secretly listening in on your phone calls,
Right.
except it's happening in the digital realm.
Right.
I could see how that would be a major security risk.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if sensitive information is being transmitted.
Right. Speaking of databases, let's talk about SQL injection.
Okay, SQL injection.
SQL, isn't that a database language?
It is.
What does that have to do with cyber attacks?
It's all about exploiting vulnerabilities in a website's code to access the database behind it.
All right.
Imagine a librarian with access to all sorts of sensitive information, right?
Yeah.
An attacker using a clever question, disguised as a normal request, tricks the librarian into revealing that confidential data.
That's a great analogy. So it's like a hacker whispering the right words to unlock a treasure trove of data.
That's a good way to put it.
That seems like a big deal.
It is a big deal. Protecting against SQL injection is a major concern for website developers,
Yeah.
especially for sites handling sensitive user information. Now, let's move on to some of the security practices that can help, protect against these attacks.
Okay, so we've seen the dark side. Now let's focus on how to stay safe in the digital world.
Right.
What are some of the things that that people can do to protect themselves?
One important practice is code auditing. It's like having a detective inspect a crime scene, right?
Okay.
But for software.
So instead of looking for fingerprints and DNA, they're looking for security flaws in the code.
Exactly. Code auditors scrutinize the source code, looking for vulnerabilities before attackers can exploit them. It's all about finding those hidden weaknesses and fixing them before they can be used against you.
Okay. Another important concept is defense in depth.
Yeah, defense in depth.
Which is all about having layers of protection.
Right, just like a medieval castle.
So it's not just relying on one wall, but having multiple layers of defense.
Exactly. Imagine a castle with a moat, walls, and guards, right? Even if one layer is breached, the others are still there to protect the valuable assets inside.
Okay.
The same applies to cybersecurity.
Gotcha.
Multiple security measures working together create a more robust defense.
Makes sense. And finally, let's talk about input validation, which sounds deceptively simple.
It does, yeah.
But it's probably more complex than it seems at first.
It's a fundamental security practice, and it's all about, being cautious about what you let into your system.
Okay.
Think of it like a quality control check at a factory.
Sure.
Before any materials are used, they're inspected to make sure they meet the standards.
So you're checking all the data that enters your system, making sure it's legitimate and doesn't contain anything malicious?
Exactly. By verifying and sanitizing user input, you can prevent attackers from injecting harmful code or manipulating data to cause harm.
It's like having a bouncer at the door.
Right.
Checking IDs and making sure only authorized guests get in.
Exactly.
Okay. I like that analogy. It makes the concept of input validation much more clear. Okay. I think we've laid a solid foundation here with those core security practices. But now it's time to get into some of the more intriguing aspects of cybersecurity. Are you ready to explore some intriguing terms and concepts?
Absolutely. This is where things get really interesting. Let's start with honeypots.
Honeypots. They sound tempting.
They do.
But I'm guessing they're not what I'm picturing.
They do sound sweet.
Yeah.
But in cybersecurity, honeypots are decoy systems.
Okay.
They're intentionally designed to be vulnerable and attract attackers.
Wait, so you're saying security professionals are like setting traps for hackers? Why would they do that?
Think of it like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, right?
Okay.
To lure in a mischievous critter.
Okay.
Well, by monitoring the honeypot, security experts can observe how attackers operate,
Gotcha.
gather information about their tactics,
Right.
and use that knowledge to bolster real defenses.
So it's like studying your enemy's moves to prepare for a real attack.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
What about salt? I'm assuming this isn't something you sprinkle on your food.
No, not this kind of salt. It's a security measure for passwords. Remember how we talked about hashing passwords to protect them?
Uh-huh.
Well, salt is like like adding an extra layer of security to that hash.
Okay, how does that work?
Imagine two people using the same password.
Okay.
Without salt, their hash or passwords would be identical,
Okay.
but with salt, a unique random string of characters is added to each password before it's hashed.
Gotcha.
So even if they have the same password, their hashed passwords will look totally different.
It's like adding a secret ingredient to each dish
Yeah, you could say that.
to make it unique.
Exactly. And it makes it much harder for attackers to crack those passwords.
Right. Okay, last term for this section. Whitelisting versus blacklisting. These sound like two very different approaches to security.
Imagine you're a nightclub owner
Okay.
deciding who gets in, right?
Uh-huh.
With whitelisting, you have a guest list, and only those people on the list are allowed in. Blacklisting is like having a bouncer who only keeps out known troublemakers.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So whitelisting is more restrictive,
it is, yeah.
only allowing in those who you've specifically approved.
Mm.
And blacklisting is more about keeping out known bad actors.
Right.
But it might let in someone new and potentially troublesome.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Whitelisting is considered more secure because it follows the principle of default deny.
No,
Anything not explicitly allowed is automatically blocked.
It's like having a strict dress code at the club.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that doesn't meet the requirements is turned away.
Right. Makes sense. It's all about setting those clear boundaries and controlling who or what gets access.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this section, unpacking some intriguing cybersecurity concepts. Are you ready to dive into some more technical terms? Absolutely. Let's keep exploring the vast landscape of cybersecurity terminology. Have you ever heard of an active attack?
It sounds pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Like someone actively trying to break into a system
Right.
or cause some sort of disruption.
Exactly. It involves a direct action taken against a target system.
Right. So an active attack is all about taking proactive steps to compromise a system. Speaking about proactive measures, what about Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES?
AES is a widely used symmetric encryption algorithm. Remember how we talked about symmetric encryption
Yeah.
using a single key to both lock and unlock data? Well, AES is one of the strongest and most trusted algorithms for doing just that.
So it's like having a super secure locking key system
Yeah,
for protecting sensitive data.
exactly.
Where's AES typically used?
It's used in a wide range of applications,
Oh.
from online banking to securing government communications. Its combination of speed and security makes it a top choice for many industries.
Okay, next up is agile development. Does this have anything to do with flexibility and adaptability in the software development process?
You're spot on. Agile development is all about being nimble and responsive, right?
Okay.
Unlike traditional waterfall models,
Mhm.
which are very linear and rigid, agile teams work in short cycles, constantly adapting to changing requirements and feedback.
So it's like a more dynamic and iterative approach to building software.
Exactly. And this flexibility is actually beneficial for security too.
Okay.
Agile teams can incorporate security considerations throughout the development process,
Gotcha.
making it harder for vulnerabilities to slip through the cracks.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about anomaly. The word always makes me think of something like something unusual or out of the ordinary.
You're on the right track. In cybersecurity, an anomaly is any deviation from expected behavior in a system or network.
So it's like noticing a strange pattern or something
Yeah.
that just doesn't seem right.
Precisely. It could be a sudden spike in network traffic,
Okay.
unusual login attempts,
Okay.
or any activity that deviates from the established baseline.
Right.
Security professionals use tools to monitor for these anomalies because they could be indicators of a potential security breach.
So it's like a security guard noticing someone lurking around who doesn't belong there.
That's a good analogy. Anomaly detection is a crucial part of proactive cybersecurity.
Hmm.
Now, what about anti-debugger and anti-tampering? They sound like defensive techniques.
They do sound like they're designed to prevent someone from messing with a with a system.
You're right on the money. Anti-digger techniques make it difficult for attackers to use debuggers
Okay.
to analyze and reverse engineer software code. It's like putting up a shield to protect the software's inner workings.
So it's like trying to stop someone from taking apart your car engine to see how it works.
That's a good way to think about it. Anti-tampering measures, on the other hand, focus on preventing attackers from modifying or patching software to bypass security controls.
Okay.
It's like putting a tamper-proof seal on your software.
Okay, so these techniques are all about making it more difficult for attackers to understand and manipulate software.
Right.
Making it harder for them to do their dirty work.
Yes, they add an extra layer of protection by making the attacker's job harder. Now let's move on to application programming interface, or API.
API, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Don't websites and apps use APIs to communicate with each other?
They do. Think of an API as a set of rules and instructions,
All right.
right, that allow different software applications to talk to each other. It's like a common language that they both understand.
So it's like a translator between different software applications.
That's a great analogy. APIs allow applications to share data and functionality, which is essential for many online services.
Right.
But this interconnectivity also introduces security risks.
So APIs can become a target for attackers.
Absolutely. If an API is poorly designed or implemented, it can create vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit to gain unauthorized access to sensitive information.
So it's crucial to secure APIs properly to prevent data breaches.
Exactly. We talked about public key cryptography earlier, right, with its public and private keys.
Yeah.
But now there's this term authentication. Is that different from using a public key?
I'm not sure, actually.
It is, yeah. Authentication is all about verifying someone's identity, right?
Okay.
Making sure they are who they claim to be. It's like showing your ID card to prove your identity.
So even though public key cryptography helps secure communication, you still need a separate mechanism to verify the identities of the parties involved.
Exactly. Authentication and encryption work hand in hand to provide that comprehensive security. Yeah. Encryption protects the message while authentication confirms the sender's identity.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about backdoor. It sounds like a secret way to bypass security measure.
That's a perfect description. A backdoor is it's a hidden way to gain unauthorized access to a system.
Okay.
Bypassing the normal security checks. It's like having a secret key.
Right.
That unlocks all the doors in a building.
So it's a vulnerability that allows attackers to sneak in undetected.
Exactly. Attackers can create backdoors by exploiting software vulnerabilities or by intentionally inserting malicious code during development.
Gotcha.
It's a serious threat that can compromise the integrity of an entire system.
Okay, moving on to base 64. That sounds more like math than cybersecurity.
It might sound technical,
yeah,
but it's a common encoding scheme used in various applications, including cybersecurity.
Gotcha.
Think of it like translating information into a different format.
Okay.
To make it easier to transmit or store.
So it's like converting a message into a code that can be safely sent across different systems.
That's the idea. Base 64 specifically encodes binary data, like images or audio files, into a text format that can be transmitted over systems that only handle text.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could be useful.
For example, when you send an image via email, right? The image data is encoded using base 64.
Okay.
So that it can be included in the email message.
Gotcha. Interesting. Now let's talk about different types of hackers.
Yeah.
We've got black hat hacker and gray hat hacker. Are those like official job titles?
Not exactly, but they are widely used terms in the cybersecurity community.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. In old Western movies, you had the good guys wearing white hats and the bad guys wearing black hats.
Okay, so black hat hackers are the bad guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're the malicious actors who break into systems for personal gain or to cause harm,
right.
Stealing data, disrupting services, or just spreading chaos. They're the ones you often hear about in the news when there's a major cyber attack.
So what about the gray hat hackers? Where do they fit in?
They're kind of in the middle, you know?
No,
They
really?
might sometimes engage in ethically questionable activities like probing systems for vulnerabilities without permission,
Okay.
but their intention is often to expose those weaknesses
Hmm.
and encourage better security practices.
So they're like the rebels of the cybersecurity world.
That's a good way to put it. They often walk a fine line between ethical and unethical behavior,
Right.
but their actions can sometimes lead to improvements in overall security.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we touched on blacklist and whitelist earlier
Yeah.
when talking about security practices.
Right.
But can you explain those terms in more detail?
Absolutely. Imagine you're a librarian
Okay.
managing a collection of books.
Right.
Blacklisting would be like having a list of banned books
Okay.
that aren't allowed in the library.
Gotcha.
Whitelisting, on the other hand, would be like creating a curated collection of approved books that are
Gotcha.
the only ones allowed on the shelves.
So blacklisting is about excluding specific things that are known to be bad, while whitelisting is about only allowing in things that have been specifically approved.
Exactly. In cybersecurity, blacklists are often used to block known bad actors,
Okay.
like malicious IP addresses or spam email senders. Whitelisting, on the other hand, allows only trusted entities
Right.
or applications to access a system or network.
Right.
It's like having a VIP list for your computer system.
And as we mentioned before, whitelisting is generally considered more secure
It is.
because it follows that default deny approach.
Right.
Anything not explicitly allowed is blocked.
Precisely. It's a more proactive approach to security.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to block cipher. It sounds like something you might use to build a wall.
Well, it's not about physical walls,
Right.
but it does involve breaking data into blocks for encryption. So instead of encrypting an entire message as one big chunk,
Yeah.
you divide it into smaller blocks and encrypt those individually.
That's right. It's like taking a long message and dividing it into paragraphs,
Okay.
and then putting each paragraph into a separate sealed envelope.
Okay. I'm starting to see how that would work.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that sounds a bit more alarming. Breach.
A breach is a serious matter.
Yeah.
It refers to a successful cybersecurity attack where an unauthorized party gains access to sensitive data or systems. It's like a burglar breaking into your house and stealing your valuables.
So it's not just an attempted attack, but an actual intrusion
Right.
that compromises security.
Exactly. And breaches can have significant consequences for organizations,
Okay.
including financial losses,
Right.
reputational damage, and even legal liabilities. Preventing breaches is a top priority in cybersecurity.
Now, what about brute force attack? That sounds like trying to break down a door with sheer force.
You're not far off. A brute force attack involves trying every possible combination of characters to crack a password or encryption key.
Yeah.
It's like trying every key on a giant key ring until you find the one that unlocks the door.
So it's a very persistent, but not very clever approach.
Yeah, exactly. Brute force attacks can be effective against weak passwords
Okay.
or encryption, but they can take a very long time
Right.
if the password or key is complex enough.
Okay, we talked about buffer overflows earlier,
Right.
which can be caused by cramming too much data into a fixed space.
Right.
But now there's this term building security and maturity model, or BSIM.
DSO.
Is that about preventing those buffer overflows?
Not specifically, but it relates to building secure software from the ground up, you know?
Okay.
BSIM is like a roadmap
Okay.
for organizations to assess and improve their software security practices.
Gotcha.
It provides guidance on everything from secure design principles to testing and deployment procedures.
So it's like a comprehensive guide to baking security into every stage of the software development process.
That's a great way to put it. BSIM helps organizations establish a mature and robust security posture,
Okay.
reducing the likelihood of vulnerabilities and breaches.
Okay, let's move on to business continuity plan, or BCP.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
sounds like something every business should have.
it is.
But what exactly is it?
It's all about being prepared for the worst, you know?
It's okay.
A BCP outlines how a business will continue operating in the event of a major disruption,
Right.
whether it's a natural disaster, a power outage, or a cyber attack.
Hmm.
It includes things like identifying critical business functions,
Okay.
establishing backup systems, and outlining communication procedures
Yes.
to ensure that the business can keep running even in a crisis.
So it's like a backup plan for when things go really wrong.
Exactly. Now, how does business impact analysis, or BIA, fit into all of this?
Is that related to BCP?
It is. A BIA is like a risk assessment for the business.
Okay.
It involves identifying and assessing the potential impact of various disruptions. It's like playing a what-if game,
Okay.
but with a serious focus on potential business
So
interruptions.
you're like trying to figure out what would happen if certain systems or processes were disrupted.
Exactly. A BIA helps them prioritize their recovery efforts by identifying the most critical functions
Okay.
and the potential losses
Yeah.
associated with each disruption.
Okay. That makes sense. Now let's get back to some of those intriguing attack techniques. What is a capture replay attack?
Yeah.
That sounds a bit like something out of a science fiction movie.
It might sound futuristic,
And
but it's a very real threat. Imagine someone recording your ATM PIN, right,
Huh.
as you enter it,
Okay.
and then using that recording to withdraw money from your account later.
Okay.
That's similar to what happens in a capture replay attack.
So the attacker intercepts a legitimate communication
Right.
or transaction,
Yeah.
and then replays it later to gain unauthorized access. That's pretty sneaky.
It exploits the fact that many systems rely on simple authentication mechanisms
Right.
that can be fooled by replaying that previously recorded data.
Okay, now let's talk about certificate. Does this have anything to do with those digital certificates we discussed earlier?
It does. Remember how we talked about digital certificates being like digital ID cards
Why?
for public keys? Well, a certificate is basically a digital document
Okay.
that verifies the authenticity of a public key
Right.
and its association with a particular entity.
So it's like a digital passport. Expert.
A stream cipher is a type of encryption algorithm that encrypts data one bit or byte at a time, like a continuous stream of water flowing through a pipe.
Okay, so it's like encrypting data on the fly as it's being transmitted.
Exactly. Stream ciphers are often used for real-time applications like voice and video streaming, where speed is critical.
Makes sense. Now, what about threat modeling? That sounds like something you do to assess potential threats.
It is. Threat modeling is a structured process for identifying and analyzing potential threats to a system or application.
Okay, so you're basically trying to figure out who might want to attack your system and how they might go about it.
Exactly. Threat modeling helps you understand the attacker's motivations, the potential attack vectors, and the vulnerabilities that could be exploited.
And once you understand those threats, you can develop strategies to mitigate them, right?
Precisely. Threat modeling is a crucial part of building secure systems.
Okay. Time-based one-time password, or TOTP. That sounds like an OTP with a time limit.
You got it. A TOTP is a type of OTP that is generated based on a shared secret and the current time.
So it's like an OTP that expires after a certain amount of time.
Exactly. TOTPs are often used in two-factor authentication systems, providing an extra layer of security by requiring users to enter a code that changes every 30 or 60 seconds.
So even if someone steals your password, they still wouldn't be able to log in without that time-sensitive code.
Exactly. TOTPs make it much harder for attackers to compromise accounts.
We discussed transport layer security, or TLS, earlier as a successor to SSL. But what about triple DES, or 3DE?
3DS is a symmetric encryption algorithm that applies the DES algorithm 3 times to each data block, essentially encrypting the data 3 times.
So it's like putting 3 locks on a door.
You could say that. 3DES was designed to overcome some of the weaknesses of the original DES algorithm, but it's now considered outdated and less efficient than newer encryption algorithms like AES.
Okay, so 3DES is like a retired encryption method that's been replaced by stronger alternatives.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, Trojan horse. That sounds like something sneaky and deceptive, like the Trojan horse from Greek mythology.
You're right. In cybersecurity, a Trojan horse is a type of malware that disguises itself as a legitimate program, tricking users into installing it.
So it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Exactly. Once a Trojan horse is installed, it can perform various malicious actions, such as stealing data, installing other malware, or giving the attacker remote control of the infected system.
Okay, so it's crucial to be cautious about what software you download and install, always verifying the source and checking for any suspicious behavior.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about Trusted Platform Module, or TPM? That sounds like something related to hardware security.
It is. A TPM is a dedicated chip on a computer's motherboard that provides hardware-based security features.
So it's like having a built-in security guard for your computer hardware.
That's a good analogy. TPMs can be used for various purposes, such as storing cryptographic keys, generating random numbers, and ensuring the integrity of the system boot process.
Okay, so they're like the foundation of trust for the hardware platform, making sure that the system starts up securely and that sensitive data is protected at the hardware level.
Exactly.
We talked about two-factor authentication, or 2FA, earlier as a way to enhance security by requiring an extra layer of verification. But what about zero-day vulnerability? That sounds a bit ominous.
It is a serious threat. A zero-day vulnerability is a software flaw that is unknown to the software vendor or security researchers, meaning it has not yet been patched.
So it's like a hidden weakness that attackers can exploit before anyone else knows about it.
Exactly. Zero-day vulnerabilities are highly sought after by attackers because they provide a window of opportunity to exploit systems before defenses can be put in place.
So it's like a race against time to discover and patch these vulnerabilities before attackers can take advantage of them.
Precisely.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into cybersecurity terminology. We've explored everything from foundational concepts to attack techniques, security practices, and intriguing terms and concepts.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
But I think the key takeaway here is that cybersecurity is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
I agree.
The digital landscape is constantly evolving, and so are the threats we face.
Right. New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time, and attackers are constantly developing new techniques to exploit them.
So it's crucial to stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep learning about the latest threats and security best practices.
Absolutely. And, don't be afraid to ask questions and seek help when you need it.
Yeah, there's so many great resources available online and in your community.
Exactly. And remember, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility.
Right, we all play a role in protecting ourselves and our digital assets.
So stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe in the digital world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this cybersecurity deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for listening. We hope you found this exploration of cybersecurity terminology informative and engaging.
Absolutely. We encourage you to dive deeper into any of the terms that piqued your interest and continue your cybersecurity journey.
Until next time, stay safe and stay secure.